Karla Homoloka tapes. Paul Bernardo, otherwise known as the Scarborough Rapist, terrorized the community of Scarborough, Ontario during the late 1980s and early 90s. He is known to have committed 18 rapes or attempted rape and murdered more than 3 people. In 1988, the police began to realize that there was a serial rapist committing the crimes, so they launched a special task force dedicated to capturing him. In 1990, police gathered DNA evidence from 130 suspects in the case. One of the suspects was Paul Bernardo, who submitted DNA evidence but was released in November of 1990. In 1990, Paul got engaged to a woman named Karla Homoloka. Only a few weeks after their engagement, Paul started to become obsessed with Karla's younger sister, Tammy. Paul convinced Karla to drug her sister and allow him to rape her. The two videotaped the horrific acts they performed on Tammy. During it, Tammy began to choke on her vomit, which led to her death. So Karla took the camera and dressed up in Tammy's clothes and pretended to be her and continued with the act. Police looked into Tammy's death, but ruled it out as an accident. On June 15, 1991, Paul kidnapped a young girl named Leslie Mahaffey, and he brought her back to his home with Karla. They then videotaped them torturing the girl to Bob Marley and David Bowie records. They then murdered the girl. Paul claims Karla killed her by an overdose of sleeping pills, but Karla claims Paul killed her by strangling her to death. In April of 1992, they abducted another girl by the name of Christine French. They filmed themselves torturing her. They also murdered her. 2 years after he submitted his DNA, Paul Bernardo was linked to the Scarborough Rapist case and arrested. However, they had no evidence other than the DNA to link him to the murders, so they asked Karla to testify against him, and she did. Karla was sentenced to 12 years in prison, and Paul was sentenced to life in prison. The police found several videotapes hidden in the house. The tape showed Karla drugging and sexually assaulting victims without Paul in the room. Canadian authorities said that there was no need to keep the torture tapes, so they were destroyed. There is an interview in which Karla watches the tapes, but the recordings are off limits to the public, are now only accessible to the police. Karla was released from prison in 2005 and lives with her husband and 3 children, and Paul is eligible for parole in 2020.